Hi, this is Anil from Learning Lab with a video tutorial on C programming. So in this tutorial we're gonna see how to allocate the memory dynamically using the malloc function, and then how to deallocate that allocated memory using the free function. So if you guys don't know about what is this dynamic memory allocation, what's the need of it, please watch my other video tutorial on dynamic memory allocation. Okay, first we're gonna see the syntax of these two functions, and then we're gonna see how to use them in our program. Before we start with our tutorial, you need to include this stdlib, which is standard library.h header file, to your program if you want to use this malloc and free functions. This malloc function is going to take the number of bytes that we want to allocate, and this malloc function is going to return the address of the first byte of the allocated memory. So when we use this malloc function, it's going to allocate the requested bytes from the heap. And if you guys don't know what is this heap, then please watch my tutorial on dynamic memory allocation. If the number of bytes requested are present in the heap to allocate, then it's gonna allocate that memory and return the address of the first byte. And if that number of bytes are not present in the heap, then it's gonna return a null value. So here void star means that the function is gonna return the address in memory, and the pointer does not have any data type. So while using this malloc function, we're gonna cast this returned address to the appropriate type, and I'm gonna explain that when we are using. And this free function is used to deallocate that allocated memory using the malloc function. So as a parameter to this free function, we need to pass the address or the pointer returned by this malloc function, and this free function is not gonna return any values. Okay, now we're gonna see how we can use this in our program. So first I'm gonna show you how to create a pointer and allocate memory dynamically to store a integer value. So for that we need a integer pointer, so I'm gonna create that. So it's gonna be int star p. Then we're gonna use the malloc function, so it's gonna be p equal to malloc and the number of bytes. So in my system, to store an integer value, I need 4 bytes, and you can check that using the size of operator. So if you guys don't know about this size of, then you can watch a video tutorial on that. Okay, now it's gonna be the size of int. So this size of operator is gonna return how many bytes required to store our integer value. So in my system it's going to be 4, so this malloc function is going to allocate 4 bytes in the heap. So we're going to cast this to integer because we are storing the integer value in our allocated memory. So it's going to be int star. So p equal to malloc of size of int is going to allocate enough memory from the heap to store a integer value. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check whether the malloc function has successfully allocated the memory for us or not. So if that malloc function has successfully allocated, then it's gonna return the address of the first byte, and if it has failed to allocate, then it's gonna return the null value. So we're gonna check that using p equal to null. If p equal to null, it's gonna mean that the memory wasn't allocated, and we're gonna say that using put as function fail to allocate memory, else, which means the malloc function has successfully allocated memory for us, then we're gonna store the value in that allocated memory. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use star p equal to, let's say, 20. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna retrieve the value. So I'm gonna use the printf function. So it's gonna be printf, then %d, because we are dealing with the integer value, and star p. Save this one, execute, compile and run. So you can see here we have successfully allocated the memory using the malloc function, and we have stored and retrieved the value in that allocated memory. So the next thing is, once you allocate some memory from the heap, the as a programmer, you need to free that memory. So if you forget to free that memory, then the allocated memory will not be available to any other programs running in the system. you know that's why we're gonna free that memory. For that, we're gonna use the free function, and as a parameter we need to pass the address returned by the malloc function, which is p. Which is the value stored in this pointer p. So it's gonna be p, and execute, compile and run. You can see here we have successfully allocated the memory. We have stored some value, we have retrieved that value, and we also free that allocated memory. So next, if you want to create a floating point pointer, we need to change this one to float, and here it's gonna be float, size of float, and let's say a value of 20.32, and we're gonna use %f here. That's it. Save it, execute, compile and run. You can see here we have successfully allocated the memory to store a float value. Next, if you want to allocate the memory to store a character value, we need to change this one to char. Here also char, and here also. Next, we're gonna store a character value, let's say a. Then I'm gonna use %c. Save, execute, compile and run. You can see here we have successfully allocated the memory to store a character value. So the next thing I want to teach you is how to allocate the memory to store the number of characters entered by the user. So here in this case, we don't know what's gonna be the length. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna remove all these things, and we're gonna start writing the program to allocate the memory to store the enough number of characters entered by the user, and we don't know the size. Okay, first we're gonna create a pointer. It's gonna be char p, and next we need a variable called length, subtype integer, and then we're gonna ask the user to enter the length of the string he's gonna enter. So it's gonna be, I'm gonna use a putS function, and I'm gonna ask the user enter the length of the string that you are gonna enter. Okay, that's a good message. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna store the length entered by the user. So I'm gonna use a scanf function, and I'm gonna use %d because the length is an integer value, and I'm gonna store that in my length variable. So that's why I'm gonna use %length here. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna allocate the memory using the malloc function. So we'll be using p equal to then malloc, and here the size. Since the values entered by the user are of character type, so we're gonna use the size of char, which is always 1, but it's always a good practice to use this size of operator. Then we need to multiply that with the length and +1. So why this +1? All of you know that when we deal with the strings, a string always ends with a null character. So we always need 1 byte of more memory to store that null character, and that's why I'm gonna add 1 to this. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to cast this one to character type. So it's gonna be char star in the brackets. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna check whether the memory has been allocated for us or not. So I'm gonna use the if statement. If p equal to null, it's gonna mean that the memory wasn't allocated for us. I'm gonna say, using the putS function, I'm gonna say memory is not available. Else, if that memory is allocated for us successfully, then The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna flush the input stream, so that if any characters is present in the buffer, then it will be cleared. For that purpose, I'm gonna use the f flush function, and then we need to pass stdin, which is standard input, as a parameter to this flush function. And next I'm gonna ask the user to enter the string. So we're gonna ask enter the string. Okay, it should be in double quotes. Alright, the next thing is we're gonna receive the value. I'm gonna use the get as function, and it's gonna be p. Next we'll be printing that value entered by the user. For that I'm gonna use the put as function, so it's gonna be put as and p. And the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna free that allocated memory. I'm gonna use the free function as a parameter. We need to pass p. This is it. I'm gonna save this one, and okay, everything is alright. Execute, compile and run. Enter the length of the string that you're gonna enter. So I'm gonna say 5, and when I hit that, it says enter the string. So here I'm gonna enter the string of length 5. So I'm gonna enter angie, A-N-G-I-E, which is of 5 characters, and then hit enter. It just printed out the value that we have entered. So when we enter the length of the string, which is 5 in this case, this malloc function has allocated 6 bytes. Actually, size of character is 1 into length, which is 5, plus 1, which is equal to 6 bytes in the heap, and then we just store that entered value using this get as function in that allocated memory. Then we just printed out the value from that memory, and also we just freed that allocated memory. So this is it, guys. This is about the malloc function and free function in C. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like my Facebook page at facebook.com/learninglad, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.